Big news, Vortex Nation. The U.S. Army selected Vortex to provide its next-generation squad weapon fire control optic. But what the heck is a next-generation squad weapon fire control optic? What features does it have? What capabilities does it have? What is active reticle? Is it durable? Where will it be made? Alexander Lewis from Vortex's secret squirrel sector goes deep into this incredible smart optic in this episode of the Vortex Nation podcast.
All right, everybody, we've got a very exciting one. Mark has been so nice to let me intro this podcast. Thank you. I've been very excited about this one. If you have seen, maybe you've already noticed the title, you already know what we're going to be talking about. If you saw the title and you're wondering what's the alphabet soup that we're about to speak on, you haven't been kind of in the know on some of the new things with the military, in particular the Army in this case. They've been developing some pretty neat stuff for our soldiers. And we have had the unique opportunity to be kind of part of that. We have somebody across the table from Mark and myself. His name is Alexander Lewis, and he is part of a unique group within Vortex. We've almost hinted at them a few times, like when we've had guys like Ian or my brother Sam or Tony on, but we've never really even talked about it hardly at all. And so anyway, there was some news that was released recently, and we're going to let Alexander go into a lot of this. Now, just to caveat in advance, a lot of people who have been in the know have seen this new product. It's kind of this contract that was awarded, and they've been wanting to know everything about it. It's really crazy. It's futuristic looking. It sounds pretty wild about what it can do if you see the press release. We are going to go into as much detail as we are literally allowed to go into. So I'm saying that because I guarantee there's going to be people who are probably like, they're shaking their computer screens saying, talk more about XYZ. There is this very specific amount of information we can go into, and there's a lot of details. Unfortunately, obviously, yes, they are the very cool details oftentimes, but we cannot go into them. So Alexander will be helping us along here. If Mark and I ask a question and he says basically, that's too specific, then we're just going to have to move on, and we'll leave it somewhat up to your imagination. But I've seen a lot of wild information flying out there on the internet. I'm not sure where any of these people have even... I know they haven't gotten any information from any reliable source whatsoever. We don't know them, and a lot of it has been wildly inaccurate. So anyway, this is kind of from the source as much as we can divulge. Okay, Alexander, though, why don't you introduce yourself, because you're new to the podcast. Welcome.
Yes, I am. Thank you. Appreciate it. Well, I'm really happy to be on board today. So I am the project manager for the NGSW Fire Control. So I've been with the project for about 3.5 years now. Definitely not the longest person on the team by any means, but been working it for a while. Helped with some of the training documentation that we have, keeping compliance to some of the government requirements for our different contracts that we've had with them and different efforts, and that's largely been my role in the project. Done some testing, done some demos, and looking forward to getting to finally share this with the rest of the world.
Yeah, you've had to kind of give the presentation on the product a number of times. This is the first time you're able to do it for kind of more of a public forum.
Correct.
And so that's pretty cool. I was going to say something else, but it's suddenly slipped my mind. Oh, we are going to primarily today talk about the product for what it's worth. There's a whole interesting story around just the whole how this even comes to be. But real quick, I do feel like one thing we should address. You said NGSW.
Yes.
Fire Control.
Correct.
What even is that?
Great question. All right, so the NGSW is the Next Generation Squad Weapon. So what the Army is looking at doing is they're looking at replacing the M4 and the 249 with a brand new rifle. So the Army dictated a caliber, 6.8 millimeter, and they dictated a velocity, and they went out to the entire firearms market, and they said, design us guns that do this. And so they went out and they came back and they selected 3 different companies who are looking at producing the NGSW R and AR, so the next generation squad weapon rifle and automatic rifle to replace the M4 and the 249 respectively. The NGSW Fire Control is the smart optic sister program to the weapons program. So there's no point in fielding a new wonderful rifle that can reach out beyond 600 meters if you don't have the optics that can support it. So this has been a culmination of several different programs and years of development to develop a smart scope for it. And recently, Vortex was selected as the sole source winner for that program. So for the next 10 years, we will be producing up to 250,000 of these scopes for the U.S. Army for use on the NGSW and legacy fielded systems.
Right. And when you say so that legacy fielded systems like you're talking about there, just to real quick go into what that means, the idea is that this scope, they didn't want it to be, a one-trick pony. It only works on one particular firearm. Because chances are, the M16, M4, all that, platform has been around for, 60-plus years?
It has, yes.
So they're probably going to have some around for a little bit yet.
That they are.
There's a few laying a boot.
Yeah.
So we've done testing, and it's a proven performer and a force multiplier in terms of the capability that it brings to the table for the M4. We've placed it on SDMR, Squad Designated Marksman Rifles. We've mounted it to M240s. We've mounted it to M249s, the belt-fed machine guns. We are also looking, in the future and looking at mounting it on additional platforms. One that would be of particular interest to us in the future would be the 338 medium machine gun that they're developing. This will be a great technology to place on anything that you're looking to extend the current range of a weapon system for. So just because it provides such an enabling technology to the soldier and to the warfighter.
I was going to say, extended range, but just so many more extended or increased capabilities there. I guess in contrast, I don't know, maybe name names, maybe not name names. Like what style of optic is this replacing? Like what style of optic is currently in play?
Great question. So you have the CCO, the RCO, and the recently developed DVO. So I understand that I'm throwing acronyms like crazy, but such is the nature of dealing with government programs, right? So the CCO would be a red dot, right? The RCO would be a fixed 4X prism sight, the ACOG. And the DVO was recently selected as a 1-to-6 optic to put on the M4. This is right now not planned to go out to every soldier. This is planned on going out to the close combat force. So the idea is that this is going to be going to the tip of the spear, and you'll still be fielding the M4s to the other support elements of the military for the extended future, just because of the logistics associated with fielding new optics and new rifles and machine guns to those forces.
Yeah. What a tremendous undertaking.
It is.
That has to be.
Yes.
It's already been, this has been, even just for the optic, for us it's been a year, a process 5 years plus in the making. And we're just talking about an optic. We're talking about just building an optic. Luckily, we get to build the same optic over and over and over. They've got every unique individual soldier in their own individual place. Different. Gosh, I don't envy the folks that have to orchestrate that whole thing.
Nor I.
Talk about project management.
I was gonna say that's a big ship to be steering around with a lot of different things going on.
Yeah. Now you've mentioned this idea of like a smart scope.
Yes.
And that was kind of what the Army wanted with this NGSW-FC, the fire control.
Yes.
What makes it a smart scope? Like, what does it do? We can see, gizmos and gadgets kind of around it. It's obviously not a normal-looking rifle scope. But why is that? Is it just because we wanted to make it look like it belongs in Star Wars, or?
It is all about the capabilities and the features of the scope. So let's go ahead and run through some of the features itself.
Mm-hmm.
So the premise of the scope is built around a traditional low-power variable optic. So all the controls that you would go and mounting a tribute to a regular scope are integrated into this optic. We have a diopter in the rear. We have a magnification throw lever here, built-in throw lever with 135 throw from 1x to 8x. The 1x will perform just like our other 1x's with great edge-to-edge vision, right? The scope practically disappears, and 8x equal to our AMG line, right? This is a top-of-the-line low-power variable optic.
Mm-hmm. Moving
forward, we have turrets, just like any other traditional optic, and we have a threaded front interface for traditional things like honeycomb ARDs and things like that, anti-reflective devices.
Mm-hmm.
So that is what the scope is built around. So in a no power state, the scope is entirely functional as a 1-to-8 DVO.
And it's got a etched reticle inside?
It does, yes. It has an etched reticle inside. So in reality, because of the magnification and the glass quality that this brings to the table, even in a no power state, this exceeds the capabilities of the currently fielded CCO, RCO, and DVO because it provides a variable power for the first two, and it provides 8x power compared to the 6x power of the DVO.
Yeah.
Yep. And this isn't, and I know you've mentioned this, but I just want to clarify, like, this is like a stripped down version, but you can run it like this.
You can run it like this.
It's not like for demonstration purposes we've compartmentalized the stuff out. It's like, no, you can run it just like that if you want.
Absolutely.
If you're not watching this one on YouTube, side note, this is one you may want to watch on YouTube. I know some people are kind of like, why am I watching a podcast? But we actually have some visual aids here on the table. Nobody yet has seen in the public the scope. I mean, there was a press release a long time ago. It didn't even quite look like this. Some changes have been made since, so this is actually kind of the most up-to-date model here. Everybody's always seen it with this sort of box on top. We'll go into what that is, I'm sure, Alexander, but nobody's seen it yet with this actually removed. They don't realize it's a completely modular system, which is really, really interesting because... And correct me if I'm going like too far into it, but the brains are basically in there.
They are.
The actual scope itself,
Yes.
which is so cool too, because when you talk about the fact that it's a normal optic with sort of brains around it. I mean, a lot of people when they hear technology, they get leery, right? Because they're like, I don't know, is that a digital display where like it's like a TV where, oh, my image, I've got 4K right now, I'm shooting with 4K, and then zerp, my power's out, and now I'm just seeing a black screen.
Well, and that's a great point to bring up, Jim, because classically, when you've had smart scopes in the past, they've been an entirely digital solution. So you've had a forward-facing camera, and what you're looking at is the screen. And that's not the case with our system. We have a fully functional LPVO available to the user, and then we've injected a see-through display in kind of the layman's terms how to use it into the first focal plane of the optic. So whereas legacy smart scopes, when you used them, you had to deal with refresh rates, and in a no power state you were looking at a black screen. I remember the first time looking through a scope like that, and the batteries had died, and well, I'm looking at a black box, right?
That could be a problem.
That's a problem, right? And so a very important aspect of this system is the fact that it is a low-power variable optic at its core. So in a no-power state, you have all of the regular capabilities available to you. Mm-hmm. Another thing that we are extremely proud about with this scope, and there's a lot of misinformation about there, is this actually uses U.S.-made lenses, which is a claim that very few, if any other rifle scope manufacturer can make.
Right, and it's all built here.
It is.
I mean, we're sitting in Barneveld, Wisconsin right now. It's all built here.
Exactly. Yep. We are sourcing machined and molded parts from an array of quality vendors across the United States, but we focused on having this scope be as U.S. made as possible. Machined parts here, molded parts here. It's going to be assembled and built here in Barneveld, Wisconsin. And again, we are using U.S. made lenses, which is something that, again, we are extremely proud about. Mm-hmm. We often equate it to, for the NGSW program, you wouldn't accept barrels made overseas. So if you wouldn't accept barrels made overseas for the weapon, why would you accept lenses made overseas for the optic?
Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Right, and I think, and this is not to get too much into the story side of things, but I think that some of the people who were originally kind of thinking this idea was pie in the sky, they thought it was so because they were kind of like, well, hey, this would be really neat, but I mean, if anybody even comes close to coming up with this technology, they're going to be getting lenses from overseas because that's what, so many people are doing. Yep. And then all of a sudden, this sort of came on scene, and it was a little bit of like that
Definitely.
thing is, yeah.
Well, I'd say that, like, that's really, like, number one, it's amazingly cool. It's amazingly cool to be able to say that, but also, did that give you freedoms or avenues to make this scope, like, truly as good as it could be?
I believe that to be the case. Our optics vendors are truly some of the best in the world, and we absolutely stand by it. So not only do we have more control by having a U.S. made, right? We've improved supply lines. We have just greater communication with them because they want to see this product succeed as much as we do, right? Like this is something we're proud to make. This is something we're proud to provide to the American warfighter, and they are just as proud to be providing this piece of technology to our troops as we are. And so it's kind of one team, one fight with our lens suppliers. And yeah, I think it does provide greater versatility, that we can, just have a freer flow of communication. And then we also don't need to worry about any ITAR violations or anything like that with them, right? We can discuss things and everything can be controlled here in the United States for this optic.
Yep. That is nice. I do just love that this is a completely from the ground up optical system in here too. It's not, oh, well, we know what optical system it has in it because you look elsewhere in the market and there's, another 1 to 8 out there that has the same. It's not. Nothing else is the same as this.
I mean, you guys designed and spec'd all the lenses, the entire optical system.
You got it. Yep.
For that supplier to produce.
Yes.
Can we talk? I know one of the things we can maybe speak to a little bit is, so why 1 to 8?
Great question. So the Army, when they were looking at fielding a new optic, they wanted increased capability over the currently legacy fielded systems, right? And so we analyzed the optical requirements and we determined that 8X was the best fit. Going beyond 8X would have moved into size and weight concerns that would have started entering parameter territories that would have been unacceptable to the Army. Going less than 8X would have resulted in, it wouldn't have had the same capability increase over the current legacy fielded systems. Mm-hmm. So the 8X was extremely deliberate in nature for why we chose 8X as the max power for it.
And it's a 1 to 8 by
30.
Okay,
cool. Okay, now we got it's easy to get sidetracked when we're talking about this thing a little bit. Okay, so we talked about this is the base optic.
Yes.
Now, people are kind of again seeing it this way for the first time. Now it's got the brains inside of it of what kind of make it this smart scope.
Yep.
Now we got to talk about a little bit of what does the smart stuff do?
Great question.
Because that's what a lot of people I'm sure are wondering. What is the smart technology in here? The Army in their press release has said a few things that it can do.
Yes.
Maybe we can elaborate a hair.
People they've already been skipping ahead to this part of the podcast.
That's all right.
Understandably so.
The optic itself is pretty sweet.
So we'll turn it around and explain it this way. So we have more of a deviation from a traditional LPVO at this point. We have our power from 2 CR123A batteries, and then we have an onboard keypad and a rotary knob that provides our different capabilities, controlling the display that's built inside the scope. So once again, we have a traditional optic system, and then injected into the first focal plane, we have a display. So the display comes up and it's see-through. When you have pixels being illuminated, you see those pixels, but the rest of it is the analog image of the LPVO. And an important aspect of this is a full functioning display. So whereas other market solutions have done things like illuminating dots on a etched reticle.
Yeah, like little fiber optics or little LED lights or something.
Exactly, yeah. This is a actual display, which means we can put in whatever custom symbols that we want. So not only can we display ballistic drop, we can display wind holds for that ballistic drop. We can have a full functioning menu. There's nothing worse than trying to go through a little tiny LCD menu and click through the options and scroll through because you can only see one line at a time and you can't go over. For this system, we can have a full menu available to us, which offers us greatly enhanced a user interface for the soldier to actually understand what they're doing inside the scope. It also allows us to have an augmented reality mode. So one of the features inside this optic is a digital compass. And when you combine a digital compass with a laser rangefinder and a display, what you can do is you can have an augmented reality mode. So soldiers can tag, say, a waypoint, a target, friendly units, anything you want, and we'll call those target reference points. And they can send those target reference points via a integrated wireless chip to other members of their squad. So we are talking about the ability to have a full network of systems interfacing with visors, interfacing with phones, interfacing with other optics, allowing for easier communication for the soldier on the battlefield.
I was going to say, it's not only an optic, it's part of your comm system.
Yes.
That's incredible.
Yes.
And the fact, too, that, I can't quite even hit home on this enough, and it's one of those things that you kind of almost need to see, which, unfortunately, a lot of people can't. But you're doing it all while looking through the scope.
Correct.
And so, again, we'll get to this. You see the one here that has this sort of box on top. Again, we'll get into what that is. My gosh, that's tremendously light. It's actually, Mark, you're not even it feels like it's empty.
It does.
It's so light. Okay. But, so what was I even saying? I just got completely distracted by that.
Well, I think you're talking about looking through the optic.
Oh, yeah.
The box on top.
So this thing doesn't have like a screen on the back of it that it's like, okay, I'm looking through the scope now, I'm seeing, and then, okay, now I got to get out of the scope. I got to look at some screen that's going to tell me, okay, now I got, it's not back and forth. It's everything is real time right there. Kind of like a heads-up display, if you will.
Exactly. And so we apologize to the viewers because we've gone and we've looked at the requirements, and to make sure that we're compliant with ITAR, we aren't allowed to show a through image to the scope. But we figured the next best thing was doing a render. So we'll have a render up on the screen showing what it would look like through the optic. So what you're going to see when you look through it, you're going to see the view from your analog system. You're going to see an etch reticle, again from your analog system, and then you're going to see illuminated pixels displaying things like the range to the target, what we call a corrected aim point, and associated wind holds. And we can do things like we can save wind holds, we can save ranges to targets, and you can have multiple displayed on the screen. You could, if you didn't want to use a laser rangefinder, you could enter in manually a range and have that range displayed. We have a whole host of things available, and really looking at it on the screen is the easiest way to describe what's going on. The other cool thing is that we have multiple colors available to us, which is a huge leap forward to us. So we have a yellow or a green, we have a red, and then we have a combined orange for those images. So the user can choose which color they want. They can also choose what size and shape their reticle is. So for example, one of the things that we did to make this more user-friendly is we have what we call different modes available to the user. So when you place the optic in 1x, what we do is we have a large illuminated circle in the center, and the user can choose the size, right? Whether they want, something like a 2 or a 4 MOA all the way up to an 8 MOA, whatever they want, it's available to them. So it functions like a red dot without any other information on the screen. That way, for CQB environments, close quarters battles environments, they can focus on the threat and doing their job. They don't need all the other stuff, range to target, because they're talking, contact distance, room distance, whatever, right? So,
and that said user is just like, I'm on one power scope, figured it out.
Exactly. Yep. And if you think about it, that's what you'd want on 1X anyways, right? You want a wide field of view, uncluttered, uncomplicated, just like how you have you want your etch reticle to nearly disappear on 1X with an etch reticle. We're just augmenting that by having essentially a red dot feature when you're selecting on 1X for the scope.
Right. I don't want to have to go to 1X and then be like, I'm in 1X, now I got to go through a bunch of buttons. It's like, bang, 1X, scope knows, let's go.
Exactly. And then as soon as you come off 1X, anywhere from 2 to 8 power, you have a new mode that allows you to get a range to target, and then that will display the ballistic drops that correspond to your gun, the atmospherics, the range to the target, and all those environmental parameters that are needed to make an accurate shot. And so, again, one of the other things that we have in this scope is we do have environmental sensors in here, which will tell you temperature, which will tell you altitude. They'll tell you your inclination, declination, all of those things. Again, we also have the onboard compass. So really, we have every single tool at your disposal for making an accurate shot.
Yeah. If you're
not only is it telling you those things, it's compensating for those
things.
It is,
and it's completely, and one of the awesome things about it is completely transparent to the user, right? So we're going through these systems and people will say, hey, that sounds super complicated, right? I don't want to deal with technology, that sounds difficult, that sounds hard, whatever. It is truly, press a button, the system does all the ranging to target, all the calculations and everything like that, and it'll pop up an illuminated endpoint right in your field of view. And then all you need to do is execute on the fundamentals of marksmanship, aim and hit the target, right? And all that occurs from the time you press the button to the time of display is all within tenths of a second. So this isn't something that's running and running and running. This is a near instantaneous ballistic solution based on your exact environmentals.
That's incredible.
It is.
I mean, if you're going to go smart, you might as well go all out, you know what I mean? Because, if you were to put all this stuff in and people are thinking, I got a cool display and all that, but as we know, if I zero in and get all this ballistic data at 1,000 feet of elevation, then I'm in who knows where at 7,000 feet of elevation, well, it's not going to work. But actually, in this case, this particular scope would, because it would calculate all that on its own, which is, that's so awesome.
It's in particular importance to our soldiers as well, because as commercial users, how often are we actually changing elevation, right? Most of the time, we're going to be going out on a fairly sunny day, right? We're not going to go out when it's super cold. We're not going to go out when it's super hot. We're going to stay in generally the same region, shooting generally the same ammunition, right? So BDC reticle makes a little bit more sense to us. Mm-hmm. But now when you have a military force that needs to be able to engage from sea level, or technically below sea level if we needed to, like places like Death Valley and stuff, all the way up to the peaks of the Hindu Kush.
Yeah.
Yep.
That is a huge range that the average commercial user is never going to experience.
Right.
And so having the ability to make the on-the-fly adjustments to compensate for those massive elevation changes or those massive temperature changes, because they don't decide when they fight. Like, they need it to perform on demand. So, they need it to perform in negative 40, temperatures if they have to, right? And they need it to go all the way up to those, those horrible days in the deserts. They need it to be accurate.
Yep. And you alluded to this earlier, Alexander, but one thing that I think is, or one of the 10,000 things that I think is so cool about this optic, I mean, you guys developed entirely new tech.
Yes.
There's so much tech in this piece. It's so crazy durable, but it's also incredibly user-friendly.
Yes.
Like, you can hand this to a person, maybe with some simple instructions. And I know this, Jim, because I looked at the simple instructions, and I was like, I get it. And you know how, my personal relationship with technology.
Yeah, it's very
Which is why I like the
rocky.
printouts.
It's rocky.
So that's one thing that is like, it's I definitely don't want it to be overlooked, because the simplicity of use, and I know that was definitely a priority for you guys. It's astounding, actually.
It's something that we really truly did prioritize in the development process. We had a lot of soldier feedback from various programs as we've been developing this technology. We've certainly used it. We've tens, probably hundreds of thousands of rounds, through it just here at Vortex, and we've tried to make sure that it is as simple as possible and accessible to as many users as possible in terms of how to actually make use of this optic. Zeroing, because we have just a traditional LPVO, is as simple as zeroing any other optic, except for, well, we've also got an integrated base, so you don't need to worry about crushing your scope tube or making sure your scope is level in a mount. So that element is just as easy. And then when we talk about getting into the laser rangefinders, zeroing that is easier than zeroing a currently fielded weapon-mounted aiming laser, because of the technology that we have in here. We can zero it in a very traditional way, using focusing only on the etch reticles in like a no power state. But because we have two reticles available to us, our digital active reticle and our etched reticle, we also can come up with some unique zeroing routines that, if accepted and adopted, would make zeroing even easier, because you could have a reticle in your point of aim, a reticle at your point of impact, and you can marry the two, because the digital reticle, the active reticle, and the etched reticle are adjusted independently of one another. So even if, just like with the, in a no power state, you still have the etched reticle, those two things are adjusted separately, so that way you can always tell, things are aligned like they're supposed to be. And again, you can use them for a separate zeroing mechanism. It's a piece of wonderful technology. It really is.
Tell you what, I mean, technology can be it can be something that creates ease of use, and it can be something that creates complete frustration and complication, and that all comes down to the people designing it, though. And I think that's where you really see a well-made technological product, is when regular people can pick it up and know how to use it. I'm sure that the engineers and stuff over there, I'm sure they would have loved to maybe even throw in more things and gizmos and gadgets, but ultimately they know it has to be quickly picked up, understood, and used effectively. So that's pretty sweet.
Absolutely.
I'll tell, and then this is like segueing into like a really old story with Sam when he was designing the zero stop. How you set the zero stop for the original Razor HD 5-20x50, and he'd come up with this like super amazing engineering feat, right, of how to make that work, and then he handed it to me, and I was like trying to do it for like 3 seconds, and then I had a screw like spit and rattle across the floor, and then he just left and started redesigning it.
Yeah. Now, okay, we're going to have to start talking too. So this thing on top.
Yes.
Now, this is the rangefinder module. And like I said, people have seen it more commonly with that on top. Now, it appears to be, it doesn't have a battery compartment on it. It appears to be powered through the scope's sort of onboard power system, which is pretty neat.
Yes.
That's probably also partly why this thing is like unbelievably lightweight. I still can't get over that. But let's get into a little bit of what that thing does. And I've said it a couple times now. We have to say it. I'm not like trying to be the ShamWow guy over here. Like, are you following me, camera guy? This thing's really lightweight. You know what I mean? I can throw it across the room. But like, actually, though, a lot of people see this thing, and people are really good at making snapshot judgments based on absolutely no physical or personal or experiential evidence whatsoever.
It's called speculation and assumptions.
Right. We all know what happens with that. So anyways, people look at it and they're like, thing looks heavy.
Yes.
It's not.
It is not.
Shockingly.
Correct. So in a full state, right, fully assembled state, the weight of this optic is actually less than what the current market would have as the alternative. So we have a example scope here. While we have a long dive board, this is what you would classically be fielding. So it's a little tall and it's a little long, but you would have a low power variable optic in a mount with a picked any dive board, and then a top mounted laser rangefinder. Our scope weighs less than this setup.
Yeah.
And this one happens to be 1 to 8. There are plenty of 1 to 6s that, weigh this much or even more, that people are running around with, and even some are being fielded. And all of this doesn't even account for the fact that we have a internal display that is, with the press of a button, it shows you where to aim. With a solution like this, you have now this little LCD that you need to work through for a menu. You have buttons. Maybe you have a remote coming down, so you have this big snag hazard coming off the top part of the gun to whatever you feel is the ideal location for you to hit. It'll range the target, and then it'll display what your drop is, and then you'll either need to dial turrets, or you'll need to go in and say, okay, yep, that's 5 mils. Okay, 5 mils.
You're back and forth between the scope and the rangefinder.
Exactly.
This is very snaggy.
Yes.
You have to mount that optic in the rings, get it level, good torque specs, mount the thing on the pick rail diving board in this case. I mean, there's a lot going on. You have to zero that independently of this.
Yes.
And
if you've got additional mounts, I mean, you have mounts that can come loose on things. You've got, so many more things that just can cause you to lose zero. Ours does it in a cleaner, simpler, and lighter package. Again, it would depend on the combination that you have here, but ours does it better.
That's pretty wild.
I mean, yeah, you're doing more.
Yes.
You're doing, in my opinion, a lot more things.
Substantially more. I mean,
smaller, lighter, sleeker, faster.
Yes.
More user-friendly, easier setup. I mean, the list goes on.
In case you haven't noticed, too, like some specific numbers and things that we're like purposely not saying them. So somebody's like, just tell me what it weighs. If you know any of these products that are here on this table, maybe do a little bit of the math and you can start figuring this out. So anyway, I'm just going to throw that out there. But yes, very, very interesting. I'll admit, when you first look at it, everybody's mind goes to being like, I think of every time I see a brand new car, I think it's just got to be heavy. There's so much technology in it. It's got, everything now, it just gets bigger and heavier and more full of tech. So you look at this, and I can see how people would think, that's got to be kind of heavy, but it ain't. Very cool. So I'm glad you brought that out.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Serves as a good demonstrator to what, what people thought was the top of the line tech to what actually is top of the line tech
nowadays. Okay, so the box on top, though.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you, Jim. I was going to say, can we talk about the box? What's in it? What it does?
So
yeah.
I feel like it's so we could talk on it like the box. Like it's so much like a box is like as simple of a thing as you can get.
Right, it is.
It's a little bit more than a box.
It is a little bit more than a box. So in addition to focusing on the reliability and the usability of this optic, we also made sure that it was upgradable, right? The Army is looking at purchasing these for the next 10 years. So we expect this to be fielded for well past a decade. We've seen how much technology has changed in the previous decade. We can only expect it to grow even more in the next decade. So we built this system with modularity in mind. So with that, we have 3 interfaces. We have a rear interface, we have a front interface, and we have a remote interface. Right.
Okay.
Right here in the front, we have a remote, so that way you can place the controls. You can use the keypad, or you can use a separate remote control placed wherever is convenient on the weapon. Maybe forward. Maybe in another location is the way we'll describe that. So we have those 3 interfaces on this scope. The way that the scope will come is with a laser rangefinder module installed on the rear interface. And that just bolts down. You have a pogo pin interface on both the underside of the laser rangefinder and on the optic itself. So that will be mounted like so, and then all it is attached via 4 screws through the bottom of the optic.
Yeah.
Which offers
boom, done.
Substantial benefits to the user, to the military, to anyone involved in the process. This allows for a ranging module to be upgraded, to be replaced, to be repaired, all independent of the optic. As new technology comes out, you have different lasers, you have different pointers. All of those things can be exchanged. The front interface, as you can see here, will just come with a little machined cover over it, and that has been completely reserved for future capability growth. We can't quite get into what that future capability growth will look like today, but we promise you this is not the last evolution of this optic. We will continue making sure that this optic is the cutting edge of what is possible. And having modular interfaces allow us to make boldly and confidently make that claim.
Tune in next time.
Oh, man.
Oh, that cliffhanger.
So, in terms of our rangefinder itself, we have a functioning laser rangefinder in there, obviously, and then we have 2 co-aligned aiming lasers. We have a visible aiming laser, and we have an IR aiming laser.
Oh.
These do a couple of things for us. First, they make the zeroing process substantially easier, right? Because you can now see where all 3 lasers are pointing on a target because you can see your visible aiming laser. And then by providing an IR...
triple dead.
By providing an IR aiming laser, we can replace the pointing capabilities that are provided by currently fielded night vision aiming lasers that are mounted on guns.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of one of those things. We've got a visible laser to help with zeroing. We might as well add an IR in, and now all pointing capability is taken care of, and all aiming capability in reality is taken care of by the optic. The lasers can be turned on independently of one another. It's just a menu selection. So all of your capability that you'd be familiar with like PEC 15 as an example, with the rotary knob of visible and IR and things like that, all and high and low power modes. All of that is included within the menu. So all that functionality is retained. You can turn them off so that that way, if you don't want to have in a zero emission environment, you don't have to worry about that being giving away a position. They all operate independently, but are co-aligned so that where one is pointing, the other 2 are pointing.
Oh my gosh, that's so nice. You don't have to be
when you
futzing around. Oh, the one, little run to the litter over there, and the other 2 are always aligned. But no, it's not. That's awesome.
Yeah. So if you set one,
Yes.
the other 2 follow?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
So it is one adjustment mechanism adjusts all 3. So all 3 point to the same location. So that's what we mean when they're co-aligned. They're all on the same housing that points them all in the same direction. So we co-align them here, and then the user has windage and elevation adjustment, just like they do for the DVO, available to them so that they can go and align it to their zero to their reticle.
That's so cool.
And DVO stands for
direct view optic. Just another term for low power variable optic. Yep. Thank you. I appreciate the assist.
We gotta keep you honest here.
Yeah, we do.
Man, that's really cool actually. Super duper cool. So let's ask this here real fast. Now we have Mark and I actually we're going a little less off the cuff than normal. So I have my digital means here, and Mark, as usual, has printed out about 10,000 pieces of paper.
I'm analog right now.
Yeah, you are. Now you know what? If we combine these 2, we would basically have the same kind of thing going on the scope.
Yeah, I'm the 1-to-8 LPVO.
Yeah, if my phone died, then we always have your backup paper. Yeah. Okay, so people are probably getting pretty stoked about this. So we've kind of, this one was earlier on our little list here. They're going to see this thing and immediately be like, I want one.
Of course.
What's the status on availability for somebody who's not, right now, as of now, in the Army?
Great question.
In the future.
And it's one I'd be asking myself. The reality is, as we started this podcast, right, we won an award for a production contract for the next 10 years for up to 250,000 optics. That's a lot, right? We will be working on ensuring that meets a steady state, and we've met the demands and the fielding requirements for the Army and the other branches. Once we reach a steady state with that high production rate, we will reevaluate and look and see if the civilian market can support sales of this.
Yeah. And you already mentioned, too, it's unlikely that it would be, this exact product, There's some things in there that are just of no use to the civilian market, which would probably be adding cost and all that stuff. And there's maybe some stuff that just for practicality or who knows what reason, it may not be exactly the same. But
nothing like, we don't think you should have this capability. It's just
right.
So I don't want people to get that sort of impression or anything, but there's, and there's not really anything in here that, with all this, I was actually kind of surprised by this. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't be, maybe this is the normal way things go, but it doesn't sound like the features and capabilities in this optic there's nothing like, oh, the military can have this. You can't have this. It's not like that.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, got it. What about the durability?
Great question.
Because it's, technology and durability and, environmentals and dust and water and snow and freezing and hot don't always go together.
Correct. And that is one of those things that if you have a demonstrator that, you get it down and it functions and it displays a good image, but it's fragile, and if you look at it wrong, it breaks. It's of no use to the soldier, to the warfighter. So we have spent a substantial bit of time successfully making this rugged enough for actual use. So this has gone through a gamut of mil standard testing. So low and high operational temperatures, right? Immersion, sand and dust. Those are the easy things. Transportation, vibration, substantial drops, not only just the optic itself, but on a weapon. And for those of you who know what some of the other electro-optics testing is, this testing was extremely rigorous in nature. One of the things that will be understandable to nearly every user is our Mark 17 testing. So the SCAR Heavy is known as being an optics killer, right?
Yeah.
And we are proud to say that this thing will survive tens of thousands of rounds on a SCAR 17. And we know because we live fired tens and tens of thousands of rounds on a SCAR 17 for this optic.
Mm-hmm. Heck yeah.
And then again, it goes back into some of these numbers. It's like, well, how much? It's like, well, like you said, very rigorous testing.
Extremely.
Tons of thought put into the testing it to extreme, I guess, whatever, scenarios, capabilities,
right.
the extent it passed.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Things got to work.
Yes.
That it just plain and simple, the thing's got to work.
It does.
Yeah, that's just very important. So
Alexander's been so amazing at going through all the stuff on the scope. I'm trying to search for what we
been
may not
fantastic.
have
it's
covered.
Pretty much right. Yeah. All right. And we have gone into obviously the whole powered thing. What happens if the batteries die and whatnot? But I think if the like I said, we've already gone into that. The batteries go into the base here. It's all integrated into the system. So we look at the knobs here too. So that's the battery compartment down there at the base, and then on the side here we have that. It's a rotary knob, and then also the keypad.
Yep. So we have a keypad, and then we have a rotary knob for different settings and software configurations.
Now, in theory, not in theory, but this thing is also being powered off the scope.
It is.
If the batteries die, then your laser rangefinder is also not powered anymore at this point. You still have a scope, like we've already mentioned. Now, Alexander, I'm going to go off script here a little bit.
Yep.
I'm going to ask you a question that maybe you can't answer, and if you can't answer it, it's totally fine. But, is there... everybody's going to want to, what's battery life?
Oh, my gosh, Jim. I was trying to...
Is that a reasonable...
I was thinking of how to phrase that.
It's not that it's not a reasonable question, because it is a reasonable question. But is it a question that we can, answer and go into some level of...
Yep. So the scope is powered by two CR123A batteries. So, right, so we're not using anything exotic here, right? These are batteries that everyone's, realistically already carrying on their kit.
Sure.
And we based the power off of some Army-defined mission specs, right? So the way that we'll word it is that you can measure battery life in weeks.
Okay.
So that's I think the most.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way to answer that question. Is
I appreciate that.
You'll be measuring it in weeks.
Thank you for at least having some sort of an answer. Like I said, I went off script there a little bit.
You're fine.
But actually, we know this. When I say script, we don't have a script. Alexander has literally been just answering these. We do have a few predetermined questions. But this is stuff that you can't just wing. You can't wing it.
No, you want to provide as much information as possible. but also be careful to stay within the guardrails of
Right. I think people pretty much can like,
legal.
Yeah, I think it's pretty understandable, hopefully for the listeners out there, what it is that we're like trying to get around. And I do want to just point out too, it's just like, if there's ever a sort of military product or something like that that you're super interested in, how often does the company even make any sort of effort to try and explain it to their like sort of enthusiasts or people who use it even, who knows what, but like, so we're trying here. But thus far, Alexander, the information you provided has been super awesome. I feel like, so we have answered pretty much all the ones that I have on my thing. Mark, did you have any additional ones?
Man, I think we covered it to an extent that I feel like we can, which to me actually is surprisingly a lot. Like we're able to, and I mean, obviously we're excited about the project. I mean, we're excited about, this coming to fruition. We're excited to share finally. I mean, I can't even imagine what it's like being you guys. I mean, you haven't been able to share this information internally,
exactly.
really, I'm glad you're out of the dark windowless room. That's good. Alexander, it's good to see you again. It's been 5 years.
Yeah, that's how Alexander, when he started for us, he didn't have a beard. But I'm very excited for what this means about our soldiers and the capabilities that they'll have. I'm very excited about what this means for our local area too, and what that'll mean for American workers and things like that. So yeah, very, very cool stuff. Alexander, is there anything that you feel like is very exciting about the optic that we didn't ask you about that you'd like to further elaborate on? Or I mean, we've already done, I'd say, pretty bang up job, but the only thing that I would have is a statement about the program overview kind of as a whole, right? We are technically a small business, competing in this space, bringing the most advanced optic, to the table and being able to provide it to our warfighters. We are not a traditional defense contractor in that we do not have guys roaming the Pentagon, right? We don't have ex-generals on staff. We don't have, people just roaming and, lingering around Congress trying to constantly petition, say, hey, get the Vortex product in. We are small town, rural Wisconsin, working to make sure that our warfighters have the best technology available. And we're able to prove ourselves in this competition, and we look forward to proving this product to the rest of the world with this. Mm-hmm. What you just described in what we've done is something that I think a lot of people just maybe assume is always the case.
Right.
They're like, what, like they don't always take just whatever. I don't know what it is, and I don't want to even get into all that, but it is pretty unique in this case. That's what we'll say. It is very unique that has been the case. A non-traditional entity in our case is pretty cool. So I'm also very excited about that. So
yeah, I mean, I just it's like this is such an amazing optic piece of equipment. Like, of course, it's like I always say, I sit in my Vortex chair. Of course, they're going to say that, but man, like I truly believe this is going to revolutionize the modern warfighter.
Mm-hmm.
It will.
Yeah. So you've heard it here. Not from some guy who knows nothing on YouTube in his basement. But, and normally we would say, if you had any questions, hit us up in the comments. Go for it. There's absolutely no guarantee that we can answer any of the questions. So, yeah, this has definitely been, Alexander, thank you. You've gone above and beyond what I thought we would even be able to talk about. Mm-hmm. So it's super cool. And, yeah, I mean, stay tuned for more, though. Maybe perhaps, more information or something like that will at some point become available. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks for paying attention. Alexander, yeah. Thanks for running through all of the amazing capabilities of this optic. Really cool. And good job.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
There you have it, folks. Thank you very much for listening. As usual, give this video a like if you liked it, comment something below, and give us a subscribe to the Vortex Nation podcast channel. It would mean a lot to us. Also, why don't you give us a follow over on Instagram while you're at it, at Vortex Nation Podcast. We'd love to hear from you over there, and we'll keep you updated with all kinds of cool photos and videos from our adventures that we do here. Otherwise, we will see you on the next one. Thank you again. Happy hunting and shooting, everybody. Have a good one.